Imagine a world steeped in tradition, where every word and gesture is bound by centuries-old customs and norms. In this world, words followed ancient rhythms, and poetry was a revered art form, echoing the voices of the past. Now, picture a lone figure, a poet using verses like lightning, breaking the silence and shattering the status quo. This was Iraj Mirza, a revolutionary figure in Persian literature, whose words were a clarion call for change. He dared to challenge the established order, questioning the very foundations of societal norms. He used his words to start conversations about freedom, equality, and social change, igniting debates that were long overdue. Iraj Mirza's poetry was known for its raw, unflinching honesty, a mirror reflecting the true state of society. He didn't shy away from tough topics, he faced them head-on, with a courage that was both rare and inspiring. His words were like a mirror, reflecting the hypocrisy of his time. They angered conservative groups, who saw him as a threat to their power. But they also gave hope to those who wanted change, to those who dreamed of a more just and equitable society. Iraj Mirza's journey began in the heart of Persia, during a time of social and political unrest, a period ripe for revolution. His voice emerged from this chaos, a light cutting through the darkness, offering a beacon of hope and a path forward. His words weren't just lines on a page, they were calls to action, urging his countrymen to question, to think, to rise above the status quo. They resonated in the hearts of many, inspiring movements and protests, and challenging the very fabric of society. Iraj Mirza's impact continues long after his death. His legacy lives on in the hearts and minds of those who continue to fight for justice. He remains an inspiration for many artists, writers, and thinkers, a symbol of the power of words to effect change. His courage to challenge the norm resonates in a world dealing with its own injustices, reminding us that the fight for equality is far from over. He reminds us that words, when used with conviction, can be more powerful than any weapon, a force for good in the ongoing struggle for a better world. Iraj Mirza wasn't just a poet. He was a prince, born into the illustrious Qajar dynasty, a lineage that carried with it the weight of history and the splendor of Persian royalty. He was born into the Qajar dynasty, a world of privilege and power, surrounded by the opulence of palaces and the grandeur of royal ceremonies. But Iraj Mirza was different. Unlike many of his contemporaries who reveled in the luxuries of royal life, Iraj felt a deep sense of discontent. He wasn't happy with a life of luxury. He wanted something more, something that transcended the material wealth and superficial splendor that surrounded him. He found comfort in the world of words. The written word became his sanctuary, a place where he could explore the depths of his thoughts and emotions. From a young age, Iraj Mirza showed a remarkable talent for languages. His intellectual curiosity knew no bounds, and he immersed himself in the study of various tongues. He mastered Persian, his native language, with an elegance and fluency that would later define his poetic style. He learned Arabic, French, and Russian, absorbing different cultures and philosophies. This multilingual education opened up new worlds for him, each language offering a unique lens through which to view life. This multilingual upbringing broadened his perspective, allowing him to appreciate the richness of diverse cultures and the beauty of varied literary traditions. It gave him a unique view of the world, one that was not confined by the borders of his homeland, but expanded to include a global understanding. This early exposure to different languages fueled Iraj Mirza's love of literature. He became an avid reader, delving into the works of great poets and writers from around the world. He read classic Persian poetry, immersing himself in the works of Rumi, Hafez, and Ferdowsi. These poets' profound insights and lyrical beauty left a lasting impression on him. But he was also drawn to the modern literary trends coming from Europe. The revolutionary ideas and innovative styles of European writers captivated his imagination. He admired the works of Voltaire, Hugo, and Byron, their revolutionary spirit matching his own. Their writings inspired him to think critically and challenge the status quo. This unique mix of Eastern and Western literary influences shaped Iraj Mirza's poetic voice. He blended the rich traditions of Persian poetry with the bold, modern sensibilities of European literature. He embraced the rich traditions of Persian poetry, honoring its timeless themes and intricate forms. But he added a modern sensibility, a bold approach that challenged conventions and pushed boundaries. His poetry was a reflection of his complex identity, bridging the old and the new. This combination of the traditional and the modern, the local and the global, became the defining characteristic of Iraj Mirza's work. It was a testament to his ability to harmonize different influences into a cohesive and powerful poetic expression. It solidified his place as a pioneer of modern Persian literature, a poet who not only honored his heritage, but also embraced the future with open arms. Iraj Mirza lived in a time of great change. Born in 1874, he witnessed the transformation of Persia from a traditional society to one grappling with the forces of modernization. His life spanned a period marked by significant social, political, and cultural upheaval. Persia was dealing with the pressures of modernization. The country was caught between the old and the new, trying to find its place in a rapidly changing world. The streets of Persian cities were bustling with new ideas and technologies, yet the echoes of ancient traditions still lingered. The traditional social structure was being challenged. Families that had adhered to age-old customs were now facing the reality of a society in flux. The younger generation was eager to embrace new ways while the older generation clung to the familiar. New ideas were clashing with old customs. This cultural tug-of-war created a fertile ground for intellectuals and artists to voice their thoughts. It was a time when the pen truly became mightier than the sword, as words had the power to influence and inspire. Iraj Mirza, with his sharp mind and wit, couldn't stay silent. He was a keen observer of the world around him and used his poetry to comment on the changes he saw. His verses were not just words on paper, they were reflections of the society he lived in. He chose poetry as his weapon. With each stroke of his pen, he crafted verses that resonated deeply with his audience. His poetry was a blend of satire, criticism, and hope, aimed at awakening the consciousness of his fellow Persians. He believed in the power of words to create change. For Iraj Mirza, poetry was not just an art form, it was a means to challenge the status quo and advocate for progress. He understood that words could reach places that swords could not. He saw poetry not just as art but as a tool for social commentary. His readings were more than mere recitations, they were calls to action. He used his platform to address the pressing issues of his time, urging his listeners to think critically and act courageously. He used his verses to address the important issues of his time, from corrupt politicians to social inequality. His poetry shone a light on the injustices that plagued Persian society, challenging those in power and giving a voice to the voiceless. Iraj Mirza's poetry resonated with everyday people. His words were not confined to the elite. They reached the common man and woman who found solace and strength in his verses. His poetry became a unifying force, bringing people together in their shared struggles. They saw their own struggles reflected in his words. His poetry spoke to their experiences, their hopes, and their fears. It was a mirror that reflected the reality of their lives, making them feel seen and heard. He became the voice of those who couldn't speak for themselves, expressing their hopes and frustrations. Through his poetry, Iraj Mirza articulated the unspoken thoughts of many, giving them a sense of empowerment and validation. His verses spread quickly, passed from person to person, whispered in secret, becoming anthems of change. In a time when dissent was dangerous, his poetry became a clandestine form of resistance, inspiring a quiet revolution. Iraj Mirza understood the dangers of challenging the status quo. He was aware that his words could provoke the ire of those in power, but he was undeterred. His commitment to truth and justice outweighed his fear of retribution. He knew his words could anger those in power. The ruling class was not fond of being criticized, especially by someone with the influence of Iraj Mirza. Yet he continued to write, driven by a sense of duty to his people, but he refused to be silenced. His defiance was a beacon of hope for many, showing that it was possible to stand up against oppression. His courage inspired others to speak out and demand change. He believed that real art should make comfortable people uncomfortable and uncomfortable people comfortable. His poetry was designed to provoke thought and stir emotions, challenging his audience to see the world from different perspectives. He stayed true to his beliefs, his pen becoming a symbol of hope in a time that longed for enlightenment. Iraj Mirza's legacy lives on, a testament to the enduring power of words to inspire change and uplift the human spirit. Section 4. Laughter as a Weapon. Iraj Mirza's poetry wasn't always serious and sad. He had a great sense of humor. He used satire as a powerful tool against hypocrisy and injustice. His verses were often filled with wit and irony, making people laugh while forcing them to face uncomfortable truths. He made fun of the excesses of the ruling elite, their lavish lifestyles a stark contrast to the struggles of the common man. He exposed the hypocrisy of religious leaders, whose actions often didn't match their words. He challenged traditional social norms, questioning the oppression of women and the rigid class system. His satirical verses were like darts, hitting their target accurately, leaving a sting long after the laughter faded. He understood the power of humor to disarm and expose. He knew that sometimes laughter could be more effective than anger in showing the absurdity of the world. Iraj Mirza's use of satire wasn't just for entertainment, it was a clever way to avoid censorship. By disguising his criticisms with humor, he could talk about sensitive topics that would otherwise be considered too controversial. He made people laugh, but he also made them think. Section 5. Whispers of Dissent. Iraj Mirza's bold and unconventional style didn't please everyone. His progressive views, his questioning of tradition, his satirical attacks on the establishment, all caused upset. He faced opposition from conservative groups who saw his work as a danger to society. Religious leaders accused him of blasphemy, saying his verses disrespected Islamic values. Traditionalists called him a bad influence on young people, believing his ideas were dangerous. The ruling elite, stung by his satire, tried to silence him, but Iraj Mirza refused to be intimidated. He continued to write, his voice growing stronger, his words reaching a larger audience. The more he was opposed, the more determined he became. He saw the backlash as proof that his words were having an impact. He knew that progress often comes with a price. He was willing to pay that price. He believed in the power of his words to inspire change. He was determined to keep fighting for a more just and fair society, even if it meant facing the anger of the establishment.